All right, guys, one last Godot video for today. Not that you probably realize that I've recorded a couple on the same day, but I want to show you something that's really fun, and that's using rigid bodies to sort of create an object that will move and do its own thing. So I'm going to come up here, and actually the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new collision layer. So I'm going to go to Project Settings, and I'm going to scroll down here to 2D Physics. So previously I created a layer of walls, moving objects, and now I want a layer for props. My props I don't want to have interact with my moving objects. I don't want them to interact with anything but the walls staying in the room. And I just want them to sort of be a background element to give more atmosphere to my game. So I'm going to create a new scene, and I've already imported the sprite I plan to use using the 2D pixel preset. I'm going to create this scene as a base with a base node of a rigid body. Now, in Catch the Clown, we use rigid bodies very quickly to create some confetti. In this case, I'm going to use the rigid body to create an anchor. And for the sprite, which will not be animated, I used a program called Gimp. And Gimp is a program that I really like to create sprites. It allows you to use layers. So for example, I created my anchor and then wanted to put a rope on it, and I was concerned that I would mess it up. So I created a whole new layer for the rope, and it allows you to build a drawing up over several layers, and that way, if you make a mistake on one, you don't have to recreate the whole thing. So back to Godot, the sprite is going to be under PNGs, and it's going to be anchor 2. So one way to add a sprite that I don't think I've used, is to drag it over and put it in the texture box. You can see that my pixels are all clear, not blurred, and that's because I re-imported my work. And this time, I'm going to use, instead of a collision shape, I'm going to use a collision polygon. Now, if you don't remember, if you haven't used something and it doesn't show up in your recent, you can come up here and type in collision polygon. And the polygon works like this. You're going to be allowed to add some places. So the first place I'm going to click right here is going to place a point, and I am going to pretty much outline my object, which is in a much more complex way than choosing a circle or a square. And eventually you do have to close that shape, and you'll know it's closed when you get something that looks like this. Depending on how complex your shape is, you may get more and more colors in there. If you've made a mistake, you can come up here and change, instead of create points, you can go to edit points. And for example, if I'm dissatisfied with where this is placed, then that allows me to get it, to grab it and move it. And if you want to delete points, you can do that. But right now, I'm really satisfied with how this looks. Now, my anchor is going to be underwater, so I might have to adjust some of this stuff. For example, the gravity scale might be a little high for something sinking underwater, so I'm going to set that to 0.8. And then all you have to do is drop it in your room, and it will act based on the physics you provided, given its weight and gravity scale, and this can be a lot of fun to play with. Now, I'm not going to apply any forces to it. I'm not going to give it any code whatsoever, and that's what makes the rigid body so cool, is that it oftentimes can do behavior without you even having to type in a single line of code. So I'm going to save this as an anchor, and I'm going to place it in my game. So as a child of game, I'm going to place an instance of anchor, and I just got to drag them in here. Now, I do want to make sure to set its collision layers. So again, with the rigid body selected, I'm going to go to the collision layers. This is a prop, and I want it to interact only with my walls. So let's see what the result I get here is. And as it falls, it should rock and start to act a little bit unpredictably, as a real object would if you were to drop it underwater. Now, I don't know how random it is there is a little bit of a slant there, so it probably right now will always fall to its well, what appears to me to the left, and I assume that's what it looks like to you. Now you can play around with a couple different things. One thing I would like to show you is that when you do have some overlap, and my snail will probably overlap with this. This is not a static body, so my snail should not even detect it's there, because remember, the snail is only going to react to a collision that is with a new static body. So you can see he goes behind my anchor. If that's what you want, that's great, but there is a way to affect how close and far something is, and that's using the z-index. So I'm going to go to the z-index here, and I'm going to set that to a negative number. Now, let's see what effect that's going to have, because it may have more of an effect than I want. So if I change the z-index to a -1, for example, it appears as if that didn't, oh, I didn't go negative. And I wonder if that's because my background, when I set my z-index for my background's actually a lower negative number, -2. So if I get to the point where my anchor is a lower negative than my background, you can see now my background's in front of it. So I do have to be careful of that. But if I leave this at -2, I think, and I'm just about out of time, that my snail should be able to go in front of it. So just to demonstrate this, I am going to grab my snail, and I'm going to cheat here a little bit. I'm going to grab, bring him over, and I'm going to make his direction be to the left, and I'm going to rotate him. So I'm going to set his rotation back to 0, drag him down, and then this way we can see if my snail will go in front of my anchor. I may have students bursting into my room. Oops, I set the wrong -1 on, you can see -1 is left and right, or left, 0 on the up and down. All right, so I just want to make sure that my snail goes in front of my anchor, because he has a higher z-index, and let's see if in fact he does. And you can do all kinds of props. You can see because the z-index of my snail is 0 and my anchor is -2, my snail does go in front. Now, if you wanted your anchor in front, you could adjust it that way. But this is a quick thing, a little fun with RigidBodies and using a z-index to get some props into your game. Thanks for watching.